To some other news, the emergency energy conference in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia came to an end with no consensus reached on the cause of high global oil prices. One positive outcome is a pledge from Saudi Arabia to boost its output. Meanwhile, a communique released from the meeting calls for joint efforts from oil-producing and consuming countries to take practical and effective measures to stabilize the global oil markets. Mark Dreyer has the story.
Sunday's meeting highlighted the sharp disagreements between oil producers and consumers over the core factors driving the steep price hikes. Western nations put pressure on Saudi Arabia to step up production, saying insufficient oil production has not kept pace with growing demand, and that has caused the soaring oil prices. Saudi King Abdullah said his kingdom would increase production to 9.7 million barrels a day, beginning in July. He also proposed creating a $1 billion OPEC fund and offered $500 million in soft loans to help poor countries cope with soaring oil prices. Oil consumers like Britain and the US said the move was unlikely to cool prices in the short term after they'd originally hoped for more decisive action. But King Abdullah argued that Saudi Arabia was not to blame for high oil prices and denied there is a shortage of oil supply.
There are several factors behind the unjustified swift rise in oil prices. Speculators who play the market for their own gain, increased consumption by several developing economies, and additional taxes on oil in several consuming countries.
Meanwhile, a statement released at the end of the meeting expressed the view that a stable international oil market is in the best interests of all concerned. It calls for improved transparency and regulation in oil production and financial markets dealing in crude oil. And it urges greater investments in the exploration and production of crude oil, as well as in renewable energy resources. Mark Dreyer, CCTV.
In a news conference after the meeting, Saudi Arabia's Oil Minister Ali Naimi pledged to pump even more oil in the future in response to the request of consumer countries.
The kingdom is prepared to make additional quantities of crude oil available to the market should our customers tell us they need to lift those additional barrels. At the same time, we are continuing our work to bring further crude oil increments on stream and to raise our maximum sustained production capacity, which will reach 12.5 million barrels per day by the end of next year.
The oil minister from Kuwait, the world's fourth largest oil exporter, made a similar promise, but other OPEC members said that alone would not be enough to calm a market driven to almost $140 a barrel last week. Meanwhile, also at the Jeddah conference, Chinese Vice President Xi Jinping says China will pursue a sustainable energy strategy which is economical, clean and safe. He says China has consistently made economizing on energy consumption a priority, and the country is working to promote the sustainable development of world energy and to safeguard energy security. China raised oil prices on Friday, and Xi notes the move aims to help guarantee and increase domestic oil supplies and enhance oil conservation. And this is Worldwide Watch on CCTV International. More news and stories just ahead. Zimbabwe's opposition leader withdraws from the country's presidential runoff, alleging intimidation against his party. And Thailand's Prime Minister expresses his resolve to remain in his post despite calls for his resignation.